Remember, remember the 5th of November, gunpowder treason and plot. We see no reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgot.
The battle, which was a lost cause, a last stand of a faction of conspirators which showed no bounds of the power of religion in the 1600s. The Gunpowder Plot of 1605 left a great impact on England because of the events that took place on that fateful night of November 5th, the capturing and the trials of the plotters, and the laws and changes that took place. The plot to replace the Protestant king with the Catholic ruler was well thought out by 5 plotters that in the end failed. As the plot was discovered, many tedious trials and torture ceremonies were taking place as the last of the plotters were hunted down. The result of the failure of the malicious conspirators was even more ruthless laws against Catholics. All of these events come from the transition to the new ruler and the first meeting at the Duck and Drake. March 24, 1603. The great Queen Elizabeth I dies in her bed without a spouse. After long considering her next ruler, she chooses her distant relative, King James IV of Scotland. Many Catholics at the time were excited about this transition because James was raised by Catholic parents, so laws against him would be repealed. But as they learned this would not be the case, they're actually more unforgiving than before. The laws against Catholics in England have been going on for decades. Most of these laws regulate the abilities of Catholics in English life because it was effectively legal. For a short time, James played peacemaker with both sides of the religion, but that did not last long as high-up leaders who were Protestant forced him to become harsher against Catholics. This resulted in a chain of events that would transform the English life forever.
Robert Catesby, the mastermind. Charisma and intellect were his main weapons. Thomas Winter, the wheeler dealer. Catesby's best mate, Winter, had cash and connections. Thomas Percy, the insider. Percy had family in high places. John Wright, the swordsman. He was one of the finest blades in England.
In February of 1604, Robert Catesby, an already well-known Catholic, met with John Wright and Thomas Winter at the Duck and Drake to plot against the new king. After the meeting, Catesby sent Winter to go to Flanders to get the key player in this whole plot, Guido Fawkes, better known as Guy Fawkes. Once they return to England, the final core conspirator, Thomas Percy, meets them. Together they form the base of the whole plot, but they are not the last to know. By the night of the plot, 13 people knew what was going to happen. The plan was to lay gunpowder underneath the parliament and on the opening, thus blowing up all significant members of the government. The explosive experts Guido Fawkes would complete this. During this, Catesby would be rounding up supporters to create a small army to attack London. To replace the dead king, they would bring James's daughter, Princess Elizabeth. For this plan to completely work, they would ride on the fact that people would support them in their plot. For the other part of the plan to work would be to get the barrels of gunpowder underneath the Parliament building. Although this seems hard, it was actually quite easy.
For Guy Fawkes, blowing these enormous walls was going to stretch both his expertise and ingenuity. Now, according to the plotters' confessions, extracted under torture, the initial plan, using Fawkes' military expertise, was to dig under the House of Lords and fill the tunnel with gunpowder.
Hush, hush. Wait a while. Quick, away.
As it turns out, the government was renting space below the Parliament for cash. It didn't take long before the space was taken over by the plotters and known by Thomas Percy. The other easy part of the plot was getting the powder to the cellar. During the 15 to 1600s, carrying items in barrels was very popular. It would cause no attention if Fawkes was transporting 36 barrels around London. The opening of Parliament is a very important day for the English government, and was scheduled for the 5th of October in 1605, but for some reason the Parliament was moved back to a month later to the well-remembered date of November 5th. This was a problem for Fawkes because gunpowder cannot turn stale. If it is stale, it will clump and not work properly. More gunpowder means more money, something that the conspirators don't have. To obtain money fast, they brought in another character to the plot. Francis Tresham became one of the few to know about the plot before the 5th. This, to many people, was the downfall of the plot because he was the one to betray them in the end. As the days till the opening were closing in, the plotters were just waiting and doing some final checks. Tresham had an idea to save the Catholics that would be in the Parliament by sending a letter to his brother-in-law, Lord Monteagle. The letter, translated into modern English, says,
My lord, out of the love I bear to some of your friends, I have care for your preservation. Therefore I advise you as you tender your life to devise some excuse to shift of your attendance of this Parliament, for God and man hath concurred to punish the wickedness of this time. And think not slightly of this advertisement, but retire yourself into your country, where you may expect the event in safety. For though there be no appearance of any stir, yet they say I shall receive a terrible blow, the Parliament, and yet they shall not see who hurts them. This counsel is not to be contemned, because you may do good and can do no harm, for the danger is past as soon as you have burnt the letter. And I hope God will give you the grace to make good use of it. To those holy protection I commend you.
Although he was Catholic, he was not extreme enough to betray his king. Monteagle reported the letter to Robert Cecil, who in turn brought it to the king himself. This was the whole reason why the plot was discovered. After the letter was received, James sent guards down to the cellar to look. They found Fawkes in the room, but they did not find the gunpowder. The guards asked who he was and what he was doing. Fawkes stated that he was John Johnson and worked for Thomas Percy. The guards became more suspicious because Percy was well known as a Catholic. A little while later, the guards came back and did a more thorough search. They found the powder and quickly arrested Fawkes, still known as John Johnson. They found fuses and matches in his pockets. The aftermath of the discovery of the plot was large amounts of trials and examinations. The morning after the capture, Fawkes was examined for 4 days straight. Every day would be the same story. They couldn't get Fawkes to tell who else was part of it. This was because Fawkes, just like all the other conspirators, took an oath even though there was torture involved. Other stories stated that the ways of torture were hanging by thumbs and being stretched naked on a hot stone. These were not proven because all these were done in secrecy in the Tower of London. But there is proof that torture was used because of Fawkes' signature. Before, it was perfectly produced, but after, it was illegible. While Fawkes was being examined, the others were being rounded up at the Holbeach house. The others were trying to round up people to join them. Not many people wanted to, so they were sitting ducks. One of the few to join them, Stephen Littleton, owned the Holbeach house. The conspirators had stolen some ammunition and arms and laid them by the fire to warm up. Because they were wet, one spark landed on the gunpowder and blew it up. The explosion blinded John Grant and slightly injured Robert Catesby, Ambrose Rookwood, and Henry Morgan, a friend of John Grant. This was the final demoralizing blow. When Thomas Winter asked the party what they intended to do, he was told, "We mean here to die." By 11 o'clock a.m. the next day, the house was surrounded and it was time for the last stand. Thomas Winter, John Wright, Christopher Wright, Ambrose Rookwood were soon shot in the courtyard of the house. Catesby and Thomas Percy were the only ones left without an injury that left them useless. Catesby turned to Percy and said, "Stand by me, Mr. Tom, and we will die together." According to Father Oswald Temestimon, Catesby crawled back into the house after being shot to clutch a painting of the Virgin Mary where he died. The musket holes are still in the Holbeach house today. The survivors were taken back to London to be examined. The newly placed laws were a key part in the aftermath of the whole plot. Some of the laws include Catholics were not allowed to appear in court, they can't live near London, homes could be searched at will, and they could not travel from their homes without a permission. Many people after the plot tried to cash in for detecting the plot. The plot also put an end to the battle of religions. It allowed for a smooth union with Scotland to make Great Britain, since both declared fully Protestant. David Herber, the president of the Gunpowder Plot Society, said, "The average family was also poorly educated, most could not read, and the matters of religion were therefore left up to the clergy." In 1611, King James had the King James Bible assembled in order to give the common folk something they could read easily, understand, and ultimately make better subjects. James also required the subjects take a new oath of supremacy, but the Pope decreed that Catholics had to refuse the oath, so the English had to choose between disloyalty or heresy. Every year on the 5th of November, England and the English Commonwealth celebrate the failed plot with bonfires and fireworks. This started in 1605 when the king demanded that his subjects celebrated him not being dead. Even on the 5th, they send guards down to the cellars and search with clothing from the age. England also celebrates by burning effigies of Fawkes. But with the new integrations of Catholics back to normal, it took the passions out of things. The Gunpowder Plot greatly affected the worst of the use, Guy. During this time, the name Guy was not uncommon, but after the plot, it became used as someone who was a dummy, since on the 5th they burned guys. As the years came, it also became used to someone who was fun. When the English seed in the new rule was planted, Guy became used for every man, as people use today. A very famous rhyme was remembered through the ages. It was shortened to over time to what is known today, but the original version was, "Please to remember the 5th of November, gunpowder, treason, and plot. I see no reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. Guy Fawkes, 'twas his intent to blow up the king and parliament, 80 barrels of powder below, poor old England to overthrow." The Gunpowder Plot greatly affected England for centuries to come, and the world also. From the first meeting at the Duck and Drake, the plot had become a pit of death. Sadly, there is no way that the conspirators would have succeeded even if their full plan had worked. After the examinations, all the surviving plotters were killed for England to see. Many of the laws put on Catholics affected them until recently. The word God was never the same after the plot. To Americans, this might mean nothing, but parts of the plot were crucial in free religion in our country, and most descend from Europeans, especially England.
Remember the 5th of November, gunpowder treason and plot. We see no reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgot.